Hey folks, so yeah, get ready, 10 minutes, sit your bells, let's get ready. I'm Lukasz and today I'm going to talk to you about API governance in event-driven world, event-driven architectures. So first of all, first things first, I like to call myself an independent open source maintainer, like I'm open source freak. So that's my full-time thing in this world. I'm also a consultant training, doing some trainings and some other stuff at brainfart.dev. I think the most important at the moment for me and also AsyncAPI initiative is that thanks to the appointment from the AsyncAPI community, I act as an executive director for the AsyncAPI initiative, although I hope pretty soon I'm going to be replaced with the governance board. And last but not least, but the most important for my heart is that I'm also a maintainer of AsyncAPI spec and AsyncAPI generator, because believe me or not, I don't only generate issues, I actually like to generate code and some other stuff in my life. So yeah, the first things first, API governance. So we had a lot of discussions today about governance in HTTP APIs, RESTful and synchronous communication. But yeah, be ready that if you started with HTTP APIs, there's a lot of different APIs out there, different protocols you're gonna have to deal with. And but yeah, luckily, it's not that hard because there's async API. And what I mean by that there's an async API, because like async API documents, they already provide you a lot of details that you can include in async API documents, and then do some governance around the content of the documents. So you already have an info object in async API documents where you can specify if your application is a producer or a consumer, what's the name of the application, version of the application, and all that basic stuff about the app. You also have a server object, so you can really in detail describe, like, if you're a producer or a consumer, where you have to connect to which broker to start consuming or start publishing the messages. You also can specify what security is needed for a given broker. So again, like, you have all the details in the Async API document that you can later govern. Channels object is for topics, for queues, you name it. Depending on the broker, you're going to use different names. But it's basically a place where you define, okay, these messages for consumers and producers will go through that specific topic. And you can put a lot of details about it, like what kind of messages with what schemas are available in a given channel. And you don't even think about only JSON schema. If you're doing Kafka, you're probably going to choose Avro schema. All of that is already possible with Async API to describe these different schema formats, depending on the brokers and protocols you use. And last but not least, operations. So you can add a bit more details, like some business details to your Async API document. So you can specify, okay, I'm sending events to this specific broker, or I'm actually receiving events. And let's not go into discussion if you can have one app that is producer and consumer, or you just have producers, or you just have consumers. It really doesn't matter from the perspective of Async API. Whatever you do in your organization, you can do it with Async API document. Now, if you have Async API and you have all these details, then setting governance is day one. It's pretty easy, right? So you can start thinking about the strategy, how you're going to do the API governance, grab all the stakeholders, convince them that it's needed. You're going to educate them. Yeah, you're going to think about the enablement programs, like how to onboard other teams to the governance and Async API. You're going to do some inventory because, like, yeah, the reality is you never start from scratch. You usually do API governance where the problems start happening. You never do it, of course, before you do APIs, unfortunately. You're going to have some nice battles about code first and design first, battles that will never finish with a winner or a loser. But after all this hard, long day one, you're going to have your first Async API document. You're going to put it in the dev portal. And you're going to be so happy. Like, you have all these linters around API governance. Day one, I'm done. But then day two comes in, the reality comes in, developers and their habits. And they'll be happy that they already have this first version of AsyncAPI document, and nobody's gonna try to even touch it because it's YAML. Who wants to edit YAMLs? And it's pretty big YAML. Like event-driven architectures are complex, so the YAML, it's not gonna be a simple structure. So what to do if you get this API drift? You have your async API documents that are not updated, or they're updated with a really bad quality. It's pretty devastating and not really encouraging to do API governance. But with my research, how I see other companies already using async API, there's a really nice solution. So day 3, and I call it day 3, not day 0, because again, most of you already do API governance, so you already have to do day 3. We have this infra as code, GitOps, or as I call it, AsyncAPI as a config, but for the infrastructure. So what it means, like you have a happy developer, because developers are always happy, unless they have to deal with the managers. Then you, as a nice, happy developer, you upload your async API document. So you make sure that all the details in the async API document are there about the broker, about the topics, about the schemas, and you push it to something I call the bouncer. Like the bouncer will check, of course, with all the rules that you've set up, the linters, checks. You're gonna check like, hey, how is it really going? Is it really good? Async API document. Are your topics really following the naming convention that they should follow? Let's first check the quality. But then what the bouncer can also do is actually get the contents of Async API document and use it to, for example, get you access rights to a given channel in the broker. The bouncer can also actually do more helpful things for you. So it's letting you into the system and, for example, configure, say, a topic for you, because everything is already in Async API document. The bouncer also takes advantage of an amazing pattern in event-driven architecture, so schema registry, where it's common that if you do event-driven architectures, you also want to have a central place in the runtime where you store your schemas, so producers and consumers in real time in the runtime, they can validate the messages that they're sending or receiving against the schemas from the schema registry. So, so what the bouncer does, it's just grabbing your updates from Async API document and registers a new schema in the schema registry. Now, if the bouncer is doing all that stuff for you, I mean, it's pretty cool. But what it also does to the developer must take care of the quality of the Async API document. Because you can imagine if the developer wants to cheat the system and, for example, not put the information about the new topic, what will happen is that they'll deploy their application, but their application will not work. It's not going to be able to receive or publish messages from the broker because there's no such topic, or there's a topic, but you didn't get access because you did not specify it in your Async API document. And the same with schema. If you didn't provide updates in schema in Async API document, then later on, you're not going to be even able to produce or consume events from the system because the validation against schema registry will fail. Now, the coolest stuff is that you don't think about docs at all. So docs are really just a side effect. It's like a pretty nifty bonus you take from the system. Like the bouncer gets all the stuff for you. Hey, developer, you have all the accesses needed. I'm letting you into the club. You get all the setup of the infrastructure. And as a bonus, look, I'm also going to take your super cool, always up-to-date Async API document and put it in the dev portal to make your managers happy because the transparency, you know? And I'm not inventing anything. Like that's actually research I did with different companies, as you can see, financial services companies, even software companies like Postman, and they all already use Async API in production to configure the topology of the broker for their teams. So if you want to work with Postman workspaces internally as a team, you have to create Async API document to get proper access. And I was afraid if I should show it to you, this slide of Kubernetes, Argo, and Helm charts. But today there was also one more presentation about actually GitOps and doing pretty similar stuff with OpenAPI. So this diagram just shows you how in production Raiffeisenbank and Kundnagel is doing it with Kubernetes, where like everything is purely DevOps, self-service, and teams don't really have to do anything. They just create beautiful async API documents. So yeah, that's it. 10 minutes. I think I made it. Thank you a lot for listening.